I think the historical role that unions played was through collective bargaining, impacting whole industries or whole regions to really help create the middle class in America and to unite workers to exercise their collective strength, to make some of the world's largest employers say yes when they wanted to say no. I reflect on my grandfather's life. He was an auto worker for the last 20 or 30 years of his career. He didn't become part of the middle class because he had skills other than he had a strong body, he was punctual, he was sober, he was hardworking, and he was willing to learn. But by joining together with his coworkers and going on strike 3 times, he helped create not only a prosperous life for himself, but he also helped create a middle class in this country, because what he earned got spent in local communities, created other jobs, and aligned with really a vast prosperity conspiracy between labor, business, and government that we would all do better when we all did better. I think today labor unions are honestly casting about for their future. We've seen relentless attacks on not just organized labor as institutions, but on the welfare of American workers now for 40 years in this country. And I could learn to be indifferent about the future of unions as institutions if there was a single example of a rich democracy that had built a prosperous middle class without a strong labor movement. But there isn't. And so I think the task in front of us, not just union leaders, but thought leaders and elected leaders, business leaders, anyone who is, if we have any patriots left in this country, their job right now is to figure out how to reinvent the American dream. I think it's impossible for us to tell today what the new strategies are going to be, as it probably was as it was impossible for the inventors of the transistor to foresee the internet in 1949. I feel like the old model's dying. The idea of lifelong employment in a single industry or craft, of relative immobility of both capital and labor, and all of the other underpinnings on which the 20th century labor movement was built are largely relics of the past. And the collective bargaining model that was invented in the 1930s is largely inaccessible to the vast majority of today's workers. The question will be, what do we invent to replace it? And I think that's not yet known. Worker-centered experiments are positive. Whether they can ever meet the test of having sufficient economic power to really lift wages and benefits, sufficient scale to touch millions or tens of millions of Americans, and sufficient sustainability to survive absent funding from foundations or other funders and sponsors is an open question. But I think we need more experiments, not less. And our job today is to really plant a lot of seeds and then harvest the best blooms. I am agnostic about whether we need more cooperation or more militancy, whether we need more voluntarism or more regulation. I think these are all open questions and we should let data and experience guide us. Here's the core problem that I see. America is becoming a low-wage nation. In 2009, in the depths of the recession, 24% of Americans earned less than 200% of the federal poverty line. That's a shamefully high number. It far exceeded the number in any of our competitor nations. By 2020, that will be 48.2% at rates of current job growth. People talk a lot about education and skills, but 17 of the fastest 20 growing jobs require less high school education or less, and 15 of the 20 pay less than $30,000 a year. I think what we have is not a skills gap. We have a gap of values and a systems gap, where systems that once aligned to produce broadly shared prosperity in this country no longer align to produce broadly shared prosperity. It's not necessarily a moral problem for individual firms. because the market does not reward individual acts of courage very often. It's a question of how we create mutually reinforcing systems that lead to broadly shared prosperity and the kind of economy where someone earning a wage can actually help create more jobs by circulating that currency in his or her local economy.